Jerry is now 74. He does have 3 Super Bowl rings from the distant past, but he knows now if he could make the decision to replace Dak with Romo that led to another Super Bowl, his 4th ring, that would add the exclamation point to Jerry's legacy, the monument he's building to himself in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. And again, the greatest story in the world is, to me, becoming the damnedest story in the history, not just of the National Football League, but of sports, because clearly we have a rookie quarterback who has now won 12 out of 14 games, losing only the opener by 1 point and the 13th game by 3 points on the road against the same team that beat him in the opener. That's all Dak has accomplished. And Jerry's saying, no, it's time for me to step in and take this over, because Tony stepped in back on November 15th. Jerry's saying he swallowed that competitive pride of his. He'd shoot nickels with you right now and beat your behind. He swallowed his pride, and that was against Jerry's better judgment. Because remember, Jerry did not bless that little press conference that Tony held by himself on that Tuesday, off day,
Correct.
November 15th. He didn't back it. He didn't bless it. He had no knowledge of it. But he's saying that gave Dak a couple of more starts because it took Jerry off the hook, took the coaching staff off the hook. He's trying to tell you they were ready to do it then. But no, they gave the kid a couple of more. But without that press conference, if Dak had struggled the way he did at New York and lost that game, Jerry would have done it then. But now comes the dream scenario for Jerry Jones. What's about to happen tomorrow night at Philadelphia? The Giants are playing at Philly. What if the Eagles rise up and upset the Giants, which is highly possible, right?
Very
they've
possible.
been really good at home, right? What would then happen? My Dallas Cowboys would clinch home field advantage throughout the playoffs with 2 games to go. So, I'm a little nervous about that because the rust could kick in. That would mean 3 whole weeks before you played another game that mattered. Dream scenario for Jerry Jones, you would have 2 basically exhibition games, the equivalent of preseason games against Detroit and then at Philly, to get Tony Romo ready for the first playoff game. And you'd potentially have 2 home playoff games to get to the Super Bowl. I'm now convinced that he will pat Dak Prescott on the head and say, young man, way to go. You got yourself a Pro Bowl, because Dak just made the Pro Bowl. But young man, it's now time for Tony Romo to take us to that Super Bowl. So you just bide your time. We'll get to you in a couple of years here. But it's time for Tony, because he can shoot nickels with any. He'll beat you. He'll beat you at Super Bowl or nickels, whatever you want to play. And it is now time to get back on track with the Pro Bowl quarterback of years past, the superstar quarterback, my son, as you call him, Tony Romo Jones. That's what's about to happen, and I'm convinced more than ever off these comments yesterday, he's getting us all ready for the inevitable. Romo returns.
So in other words, you're saying if this was a movie, Dak was the stand-in double.
He was.
Now, here comes the money scene. We got to get Tony Romo, the lead actor.
Yeah.
We got to get him in the shot.
Yeah, and obviously, if that movie ends with the lead actor winning the Super Bowl,
Yes.
you're good.
Yes.
You know, that would be the audience would leave very happy, and the Cowboy Nation would leave very happy from that Super Bowl. You know what I think is about to happen? Tony Romo's about to lose the first playoff game at home. That's what this shapes up to be.
What Jerry is trying to accomplish is what he's been doing all along. He's trying to validate his faith in the contract that he's given Tony Romo to say, see, I told you he could do it. This is so embarrassing on so many levels that Jerry keeps undermining his own team. Skip, if you remember the first Super Bowl that the Broncos won, we beat the Packers. Mr. Bolin, the owner of the team, and John this was their 4th Super Bowl together. Mr. Bolin was so excited that John, because he had gotten blown out in the 3 previous Super Bowls, that when Commissioner Tagliabue handed him the trophy, he said 3 words, "This one's for John." I guarantee you, Jerry Jones would say, this one's for Tony.
Oh, sure.
He would say, this one's for Tony. Because here's the thing I can't understand. He keeps saying, when Tony did the press conference, it took everybody off the hook. No, it didn't. That play took everybody off the hook. Because if you make that move, I don't care if you're Jerry Jones, everybody's going to say you're a fool for doing this. Because the kid had played, up until that point, he had played flawlessly. We didn't see any bumps in the road. He had 2 bad games. He won one, he lost one. He could have easily won the game at the Giants, had Dad's head onto the ball. We'll never know. But he didn't play. He wasn't the reason why, the only reason you lost. But for Jerry to keep saying these things, no, Dak is on the hot seat because you placed him there. All you ask him to do is come in and hold it fort down until Tony can get back. Well, not only did he hold it down, he fortified it. He built it. He made it stronger than you actually thought it could be. Because, see, every time Tony Romo has left the lineup, he had a Kellen Moore, he had a Brandon Weeden, he had guys that weren't capable.
Don't forget Matt Castle, who beat Kirk Cousins last year in Washington. You got to.
He had those guys that weren't a Dak Prescott, so he didn't envision. That's why he kept saying, when Tony Romo's healthy, he's getting this job back. He had no idea what he had. It almost like he found a diamond. And granted, if you polish it up, it's a diamond, but it was a rock. And so every game, a little more, they polished it a little more, polished it a little more. And here we are 10, 12 weeks into the season. You're like, you know what? We don't know, but we got the Hope Diamond right here. But I really want Tony. But because Tony is box office. But let me ask you a question, Skip. 14 games into the season, they've won 12. How much depreciation has the Cowboys suffered because Dak Prescott is the quarterback and Tony Romo is the backup? 0.
Oh, I didn't know if I was supposed to answer this one. I never know.
That was
rhetorical. That's a Shannon to Shannon.
Yes.
Okay.
0.
Yeah.
How many eyes have turned the TV off because Tony Romo is not the starter and Dak is? None. They're still the number 1 draw. They're still America's team. Although Tony Romo isn't the quarterback, somehow the stadium still gets sold out. Somehow eyes still go to the television. All without Tony Romo as the starting quarterback. Who would have thought it? And he has this kind of belief. I could see if that was Joe Montana. Joe Montana had a legitimate gripe. He's like, I'm a 4-time Super Bowl champ, 3-time Super Bowl MVP, 2-time league MVP. Even though Steve Young would win the MVP that season, you could see with Joe, like, hold on now. What is he comparing it to? Tony Romo has 2 playoff wins. I know a guy that hadn't played in 4 years that have one. The guy you love, Tim Tebow. So Tony Romo in 13, 14 years has 1 more playoff win than Tim Tebow.
Romo actually has 3 because he won 1 at Green Bay, but that's a whole nother issue. Got robbed, but it's
Stop it, Skip!
He did. He got robbed because it was a catch. We know it was a catch.
Skip,
everybody knows it's a catch. You got to give him that.
No, I ain't giving you jack.
He threw the pass that should have won the game.
Let me ask you a question. In the annals of history, how is it recorded?
As a win in my head. in my annals.
Yeah,
right?
That thick, stubborn bull head of yours, that's a win. He has 2 wins.
Yeah.
So for Jerry to have this kind of belief that if I make this switch, there's no question in my mind. Even if I do this, we're still going to go to and win the Super Bowl. See, he thinks he's going to have a storybook ending like Peyton Manning. Because remember, Peyton Manning missed like 7, 8 weeks, and then all of a sudden the last regular season game against San Diego, Brock was not all by Brock because guys fumbling the ball, guys getting the ball taken out of their hands. Gary Kubiak, the head coach, went back to Peyton Manning.
We did. It was the move of the year. It won the Super Bowl.
And we all know how it turned out.
Yep.
And Jerry saw that. Jerry said, you know what?
He saw it. He did.
And this might be even more improbable if we bring Tony Romo back, the gunslinger from Dallas, Texas. Everything is big in Texas. Woo, Skip, all I'm saying is this. If he makes this change and this thing blows up, I'm driving over to your house that night,
I know
and you
are.
better let me in.
But it won't be my fault. It'll be Jerry's fault. Because I'm riding with Dak, and you knew I rode with Dak all the way.
Yep.
Okay, so here's to your Hope Diamond analysis that you just did, or your analogy that you just made. When your team is worth $1 billion, you don't care if you have the Hope Diamond.
Right.
Then it's all about you.
Right.
So he's rich enough and powerful enough within the NFL and old enough that he doesn't care about anything you say or I say. All he wants to do is show you he can win a Super Bowl with Tony Romo. And I can't condemn him for that because he owns the team.
Correct.
Again, we don't vote owners into office and vote them out of office.
Right.
I wish we could. I would have voted Jerry out a number of years ago, maybe 8 years ago.
One more thing, Skip. Isn't he on the Hall of Fame ballot this year?
Jerry, I don't know.
I think he's on the Hall of Fame ballot. So just think now, in August, if he's selected in February, when all the other guys are going to get selected, and they introduce him as a 4-time Super Bowl winning owner, that has a different cachet, has a different kind of ring to it than
I would agree. Okay, so it's time for me to hold your feet to the fire. Is it not right that all along you have actually sided with Jerry Jones, that you wanted Tony Romo back at quarterback? Because you've picked against Dak Prescott, 10 times this year?
Yeah, 10, 11.
Okay, so isn't that your way of saying they're better with Romo?
No, they're not. But I just, knowing Jerry and hearing him talk, because we've never heard an owner talk about a backup, especially when the guy, the starter, the guy that replaced the starter, is playing equal to, if not better than that guy has ever played. So he keeps bringing his name up. Even when Dak did something good, somehow he finds a way to switch the conversation to Tony Romo and how well he's looking in practice. Because again, in that interview, he says he's doing the best scout team job of any offense that we're going to face. He's making sure that our defense get that kind of a look. So look, I don't know if he's trying to increase Tony's trade value or whatever it is, but you and I both know this, Skip. Jerry Jones can't add any more. People have an idea of what and who Tony Romo is. So him praising him is not going to add any more value. But if Dak goes, everybody knows if they leave this thing alone and Dak goes to and win the Super Bowl, Tony Romo isn't coming back. I know.
Well, I mean, Jerry could bring him back because he's Jerry.
But that's not happening.
I mean, he already said, I'm going to keep him next year because we can fit both of them under the cap, because Dak makes like nothing. What does he make, 500 grand?
So, but how is that going to, because the thing is that I'm sure the Patriots could have kept Drew Bledsoe. But you didn't want the guy constantly looking over his shoulder that he was possibly going to be replaced.
No, but Belichick was done with Bledsoe. Jerry clearly not done with Romo.
But still, he knew, even if he weren't done, because you want competent backups, because you never know, because Drew Bledsoe filled in the championship game when Tom got hurt and did a great job. So you always want a guy, but you don't want that guy. And Coach Belichick knew. This young man can't constantly be looking over his shoulder at Drew Bledsoe that if I mess up, he's going to get in. You want that distraction in there? Do you really want that distraction? And I don't care what Jerry says. I played this game for 14 years. I know and I hear, and I know what causes distractions, and I know what are distractions. And I don't care what he says. This is a distraction to Dak Prescott.